from the worlds of the Genesis of Androzani Advent Calendar. The December Dump.
Alright, Callum. How do you surrender to the White Walkers?
Just look at them very scared, and then hopefully they'll walk away without any explanation.
Oh, very clever. No, you raise the white flag.
Ah, right.
Yes. Hello, and welcome to our next Game of Thrones reaction and review. We are here to do Season 3, Episode 2, which is called Dark Wings, Dark Words. Patreon.com/Genesis of Androzani is where you can support the channel, and you can get access to the full-length reactions of these episodes, as well as early access 24 hours to these reviews. And you can also request videos for us to do. Anything you want within reason, really. And we also have twitter.com/GAndrozani as well for the socials and just getting in contact with us. If you like film reviews and you want to, review films with your friends, and even with us as well, go check out the app and website Letterboxd. This is not a sponsor. This is legitimately something I've discovered recently. It's a really cool website where you can review films and share them with your friends. It's cool. So go check that out. We also have an account on there too, which I will leave linked in the description. I can't remember what the link is to that. But yeah, it's a cool website. I like it. Last time we had Vela de Hiatus, beginning of Season 3. So what are your anticipations for this episode?
Well, I'm expecting a follow-up from... It wasn't really a cliffhanger, but it was like a stinger for the end of last episode. Probably a follow-up to that. We'll get more stuff. We could get Jaime in this, because I think that wasn't done in the last episode, and that's the big thing right now in terms of the Lannister storyline.
There's still a few storylines we haven't quite touched on yet.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll probably continue how episode 1 was going, and slowly reintroduce the things that weren't done last episode, and then probably go to a couple of things here and there. Well, it's an episode of television. I would hope it would do that. But yeah, I'm excited. Because we haven't watched an episode in a while.
Yeah, and also the with every new season, in the first few episodes, you tend to get an introductory phase. Like, you get slowly across the first 3 or 4 episodes, you're introduced to new characters and new locations and stuff, like we did last time. So there's always that to look forward to as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I got nothing more to say. So shall we begin Dark Wings, Dark Words?
Sure thing.
Vanessa Taylor.
Ooh, someone new.
No, she did Garden of Bones and The Old Gods and the New last season.
Right. He looks way older now.
And he's standing.
Yeah, so this is a dream. See, following the raven? Fuck. That actually made me jump. Fucking hell. Oh, it even blinks as well. That's really cool.
What if it winked with its middle eye?
That would be creepy.
Don't think too much, Bran.
Relax your bow arm.
So season 1, episode 1.
And which one of you will be marching in at 10?
Father.
Oh, it's Ned Stark. Oh, it's him.
Why not?
I know him. Jesus Christ, it's so loud.
Hold on.
It's alright, hold on.
His voice hasn't broke yet, though. Well, it has a little bit, though.
No.
Have you heard anything from Theon at all?
No.
What do you want?
I want to do this.
That is brutal.
Fuck that.
No matter how loyal a servant you are,
No one enjoys the company of a humorless mute. Trust me on this. People have been serving me since I was born. You think Lady Stark's going to want a giant toe-headed plank following her around for the rest of her life? Because I visited Winterfell, I've noticed your dour head smacking into the archways. Really? He wasn't fit to rule over anything more important than a 12-course meal.
Shut your mouth.
Why? Sounds like you quite fancy it.
I did not fancy him.
God, you did. You weren't Brendy's type, I'm afraid. You preferred curly-haired little girls like Loras Tyrell. It's a shame the throne isn't made out of cocks. They'd have never got him off it.
Shut your mouth.
Lady, but
God, that guy looks like Rob Sherman.
More innocent than Lady Stark's daughters.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Make it tighter here.
God, that doesn't suit him at all.
Oh, it looks like chalk.
I said no flowers.
Oh, that's brilliant. The flower is the Tyrell house symbol. He doesn't want flowers. God, it's just great.
She married a traitor and known degenerate like Renly Baratheon for a
She
reason.
married Renly Baratheon because she was told to. That's what intelligent women do. What they're told.
Oh. To be
I
fair,
like how he's kind of seeming like Robert was.
to be fair, he does look a lot better in that.
Yeah, he does.
He does. At least he has fashion sense.
Yeah, that's one thing.
And I like the fact he's like, I'm not a rose, I'm a lion.
Yeah.
Littlefinger's not in love with me.
Are you sure about that?
Are you sure about that?
Too old.
So, welcome to Game of Thrones.
Have you met your mother's friend Walder?
Dolores Tyrell, my lady.
Send him in.
Sansa likes the big gay.
She's got a case of the big gear. Oh yeah, I remember from season 1.
Mm-hmm. Yep. His hair's a bit different though.
He is.
It's a bit
Yeah.
it's curlier
Probably
now.
had a cut. Yeah, I remember from season 1.
You probably don't remember the first time you met.
Oh, I do.
That was a brilliant episode, brilliant scene.
That was. I remember I pointed that out.
Look at the scenery.
Thank you,
It's so
Dolores.
vibrant.
The color grading is like more vibrant than it's ever been.
Yeah. It's almost a Sam Raimi Spider-Man
That's a-
film.
It does feel like that.
My grandmother.
Oh, here we go.
That shot
The
was
of House
really cool.
Tyrell. Kiss me, child.
The Crimson Aura.
You to visit.
Oh god. Don't remind me.
Norris is young and very good at knocking men off horses with a stick. That does not make him wise. As to your fathead father,
Grandmother, what will Sansa think of us?
she might think we have some wits about us. One of us at any rate. We should have stayed well out of all this, if you ask me. But once the cow's been milked, there's no squirting the cream back up her udder, so here we are to see things through.
I say, what the fuck is that allegory?
Are you going to bring the food, or do you mean to starve us to death?
You know, she was the Bond girl in the George Lazenby film.
Okay.
This royal boy, this Joffrey.
Oh. Does he abuse women?
Thanks for reading his Wikipedia page.
When Tyrell farts, it smells like a rose. And they named him traitor and took his head.
Joffrey. Joffrey did that. He promised
Yeah, they
he would
wouldn't
be
let him go to the
merciful and
wall.
cut my-
Confidence, I swear it.
This is the best scene she's probably ever acted.
Oh, here comes my cheese.
I loved that zoom in on her. That was great.
Yeah, and now you can tell that the color grading has changed here.
Oh, look at that direwolf.
We're at war.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think you lost this war the day you married her.
He's not wrong. How are they supposed to get the frame in?
Yeah.
Only a mother can make them.
Think she's found her new Jon Snow.
And I couldn't keep my promise. And everything that's happened since then, it's all because I couldn't love a motherless child.
That was phenomenal.
Fuck.
I'm
actually teared up.
I'm
to
same.
that.
I'm literally tearing up, and I've seen that scene before.
That might be one of my favourite scenes in the entire show so far.
I told them we were all going to die if we don't get south. Because that's the truth.
Makes sense.
Feels weird, John not being in a crow's gown.
Mm-hmm.
Below now.
Oh. Ah.
Mm-hmm. It's a warg.
Why should the rest of us go?
Russ, you're responsible for him.
What am I supposed to do?
Make sure he gets back alive. If he doesn't, you don't.
That is a commander right there.
Yeah.
I'm not down for you, piggy. You hear me?
See, like, if it was Thorn, he would be like, I would wish I could see you die. Whereas Mormont's more like, and he's like doing it the right way, you know? He's not abusing it, he's making it productive.
Timothy Tim!
My sister carries the weapon.
Ooh.
It's 100 feet wide. How could we have passed it? If we hit the Red Fork, we can follow it west to River Run. My mother grew up there. My grandfather's the Lord. He'll protect her.
No, he won't. He's dead.
Yep. Oh well. Shut up, fat pie.
It's hot. It's hot pie, not fat pie.
I know.
We pour his home.
All to hear.
Man, that hole. I mean, yeah, they should absolutely see it, and that hole was massive.
Why are your friends so shy?
What friends?
The fat one to your left and the lad beside him.
Alright.
Who are you?
Thoros of Mir. And the fella here with the bow is Angai.
No, who do you fight for?
The Brotherhood without banners.
Mm.
When I'm done talking, that arrow's falling down on your fat head. So I advise you move, because I'm done talking.
Jesus.
Half the country's starving, and look at this one.
Maybe it's the reason half the country's starving.
I hope someone calls him Fat Pie at some point in the show.
I don't know her name.
Oh, Ros, the redhead?
How do you know her?
I try to know as many people as I can. Never know which one you are. Yes, well, you shouldn't be judging twice.
Great beauty. Oh, a
Yes, she is objectively very. But it's quite pleasing.
I was gonna say, if she actually like got really mad, I was gonna be like, this is weird.
You've come to a dangerous place, full of dangerous people. Dangerous people.
Nah, she's just playing with him.
I know. I was gonna say though, that continued on to be like, that's probably the worst scene in the show so far.
No, I think it's just like her German accent. It just sounds weird.
Well, no, she I think she was playing it up, but clearly
Yeah,
after
I know.
She
but,
sounded very upbroad by that.
Of course.
I've considered making his perversion punishable by death.
Oh. Are you familiar with this design, Callum?
Not on the top of my head.
Okay. Take note of it.
Okay. Right for the eye. God, she plays the wife so well.
She's so full of shit.
I know.
But like, I kind of love her for that. It's
Exactly.
It's the same reason why I love Varys, you know, and like Littlefinger.
Yeah. Like, it's clearly working on him as well. Oh my god, is this his fetish?
And she knows it as well. She knows it's his fetish.
Yeah, I know. She's fucking great.
Oh, look at that imagery. That's like a painting.
I know. Oh my god. Hello. I recognise that face.
Mm-hmm. And why does Bran matter? I think some of us know.
He knows how to use a sword, and so do I. My brother's taught me.
That is an uncommonly large person. How does one manage to subdue such an uncommonly large person?
Uh-oh.
Girl.
Oh. What the hells are you doing with the Stark bitch?
It's wonderful to watch you wrestle with these dilemmas. Which will she choose?
I fucking love Jamie.
Again, he's such a shit stirrer.
He must have really strong hearing.
Well.
One hand. And that was the man that Roose Bolton sent last episode, if you remember.
Yes.
Alright, Callum, your initial thoughts on Darkwing's Dark Words.
That was good. That was really good stuff. I enjoyed that throughout the...
This was definitely,
thing.
for me, this was definitely like one of those book episodes, if you know what I mean. Like, it felt like I was reading a book, you know? Like, do you get a few of those? Like, and it's obviously, it's not very high stakes for a lot of it, but it's very like, you just get lost in the story, and it's just a pleasure to watch, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. There was a lot of really good individual scenes throughout the episode, and overall was very well structured, well paced.
I thought it was very consistent.
I agree.
Yeah. You need episodes like these, I think, to just let the story breathe. You just get. I think it's sometimes like it's just fun to get those in between parts, because you just get a bit of character development, and it's just, yeah, I like it. I like when you get these, every now and then. Because with other TV shows, when you get episodes like this, it's usually shit because it's like filler that you don't care about. Whereas because we're so invested in these characters and it's so well written because it's adapted from a novel, episodes like these are actually really fun to watch. Because you get to just sort of hang out with the characters. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, do you want to get into those characters?
Yes.
So, Bran Stark in this episode, the big thing we got with him was he was seeing visions of he saw the three-eyed raven. He would flash back to the first episode when John and Rob were teaching him how to shoot an arrow. And of course he heard his father's name as well. But then of course we met Jojen and Mira Reed, who are new characters.
Yes.
Jojen, who also sees visions like Bran does.
Yeah.
Of the past, the present, far away, and the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like the Bran story is now slowly starting to take steps to what his arc will be overall, what his main goal will be.
Oh yeah, especially in this
so
episode
far,
because
it's quite intriguing.
I mean, as you know, obviously you know quite a bit about the show in season 8. And this episode had quite a lot of foreshadowing in it.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah. So, yeah. But obviously Jojen Reed is played by, what's his name? I forgot his name now, but he's in Nanny McPhee, and he's in Human Nature Family of Blood. He's the kid who can see visions in that story as well, which is crazy.
Yeah, no.
It's crazy that they have that link.
Tommy, I think his name was something like that.
Yeah. So it's like the second, it's like the second cast member from that story in this show.
Yeah. He's also in Force Awakens, and
he is.
He's also in the Maze Runner films.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's pretty much.
He's quite a famous child actor, really.
He is.
Everyone recognizes him.
In this,
he's also in Love Actually as well. He's the kid. He's the kid in Love Actually, and he's the son of Liam Neeson's character. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so he's been in a lot.
I could tell, like, in this, that his, like, acting has, like, improved. Based on, like, Human Nature Family Blood, where he's actually good in that. But he's more matured.
Thomas Brodie Sangster is his name.
Right.
Yeah.
But he was really good. I actually really enjoyed his introduction.
Yeah, it's cool, eh?
Yeah. And I'm enjoying, like, the sort of, like I said, like, the sort of starting steps of, like, Bran's overall story, like, what all this build-up has been building towards and what it actually is and what it will be for his character.
Yeah, and he's obviously, like, with the way he's been introduced, he's quite a magical character, which is always interesting. I feel like that's kind of a big thing about Bran's story, is there's a lot of magic to it. Which makes sense because obviously, the way it's written in the books, it comes from the perspective of a very young child. Obviously, he's slightly aged up here, but especially because he's going through puberty. But it's told from the perspective of a child, and I think that's smart to do that with the magic because the children have such an imagination. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really liked the introduction of Jojen. I think the actor really portrayed quite a different vibe. Like, you can tell he's what I like about him is that he's very certain of all these weird things. Like, there's things that he says that don't make sense, but he's so confident in them. And that makes him quite a bizarre presence, but it's really cool. And then, of course, I like the whole thing of his sister being a fighter and how, she says that line about, even sometimes, the people who aren't physically strong need to be protected because they're worth it. Like, and I feel like that links to Osha with Bran, the fact that Bran is now crippled, but he has these special visions. He's a special person, and like she's essentially trying to relate to Osha, saying, I'm looking after my brother just like you're looking after him. if you know what I mean. But yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that aspect of the episode, those scenes with him and Bran.
Yeah, and also continuing on, like, what we got in a bit of season 1 mainly is Rickon, like, he ran off just randomly, and, you know, it's again, it's the whole thing of, like, to us that's a bit strange, but Bran already knows what to expect, because obviously Rickon is a bit odd, and we remember from season 1, like, when Ned died, he also saw the vision, and, like, he could see the dread before it came. So it's clear that Bran and Rickon both probably have, like, some kind of connection to this power, like this sort of magic with the three-eyed raven. But because Rickon's so young, he can't comprehend it. Like, he can't put it in words because he's just too young. It's interesting. Like, it's really the only thing I actually care about with Rickon. Is like that he just sort of, he has this connection that Bran also has, but he doesn't know how to say it because he's too young. Which makes him vulnerable, because he goes and runs off and he could easily get killed by, you know, random people.
Yes.
But of course, you know, the direwolves are there, which I think that's one thing to note about this episode. I think this is the most screen time we've seen of the CGI direwolves, because we saw quite a lot of Summer and not Shaggy Dog, Greywind. We saw like one shot of Greywind where Rob was, and then we saw quite a bit of Summer in this episode as well. And I like that. I like that scene where they said that Summer would rip Jojen apart if he, you know, if Mira cut her throat, and then Jojen walked over to Summer and, like, basically he showed that he has a connection to the direwolves as well, which just sort of, like, it put the proof in the pudding about his magic that he, you know, has access to. It's interesting. It's very interesting. And
I agree.
It's sort of building up the mystery behind the Three-Eyed Raven storyline. We learned quite a bit about their father, Howland Reed, and how he helped Ned Stark in the rebellion. And, like,
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I like the detail of, like, Howland never wanted to tell their children about it, but Jojen saw what happened through the visions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then, of course, there was that whole detail of, like, when Howland found out that Ned Stark passed, it was the first time his children saw him cry. It really showed what Ned meant to the North, if you know what I mean. It's interesting. It's really interesting. Obviously, magic is... It's a risky storytelling device to go into, because it can have a lot of issues, obviously, because it's uncharted territory in terms of our own logic. But I think what was set up here was very clever, because it all had a direct impact on the characters, and it seemed like, you know, to me, nothing seemed ridiculous, because we've had so much set up already through the universe of all this magic, like especially with the Red Woman and, like, the White Walkers and the dragons. So we already know that there is some kind of magic that exists, but we don't quite know, you know, it's still kind of a mystery, but we do have that believable factor to it. So at this point, I feel like it's believable that Jojen has these visions the same way that Bran does, you know?
Yeah.
It's well built up too.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about any of those characters in Bran's storyline?
No, I just thought it was pretty interesting, and I like what they did.
Yeah,
the scene action was in terms of between Bran.
Yeah. In terms of linking as well, this episode had a lot of, like, arrows shot.
It did. It actually did.
Because obviously you had Bran shooting trying to shoot the what's it called, the Three-Eyed Raven, and then you had the guy who shot the arrow that was meant to hit Hot Pie's head, and then you had Joffrey's crossbow as well. So there's a lot of
that was a running theme throughout the episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of arrows shot.
It was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. But yeah, that was cool. I really liked that little setup in that section of the episode.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now let's move on to my favourite part of this episode, and that was the section that was just outside of Harrenhal, moving towards the Riverlands. And that was the section with Robb Stark and his men. Firstly, we get the news that Hoster Tully has passed away, Catelyn's father. So it's just like every person around her is just they're just her family's falling to bits.
Yeah, her whole world is falling apart, and it's very clear that she's breaking.
Because obviously they got the news of Roose Bolton brought the Ravens in, and again, like it's funny, like similarly in season 2, like there seems to be always tension between Roose Bolton and Rob's wife. It's quite subtle, but you notice how she's always either interrupting him or he's interrupting her. And he brings in those 2 ravens, and Rob is like, which one's the good news? And then obviously neither, because one of them is that Bran and Rickon have gone missing, and the other one is that Hoster Tully has passed away. And we got that very brief moment on the road where Rickard Karstark had that conversation with Rob about how he said, I think the biggest mistake you've made in this war was marrying her. And I like the fact that he's actually justified in saying that, because he's right. Because now if Rob was to try and if he wants to win this war, he needs more men. And if he was to try and get the Freys on his side, he wouldn't be able to, you would imagine, because he's now married someone else.
Yeah.
So him saying that was your biggest mistake it actually makes sense.
Yeah, it actually has like weight to it because it's true.
Yeah. I think Rickard Karstark is like he's not a very major character at all. Like he's quite small, a bit like you get those very small characters like Roderick Cassel and whatnot. However, I feel like in his scenes that he gets, he is actually a really well written character. Like he always, even though he's a completely like aggressive madman northerner, that's like really, you'd think he's quite boneheaded. Everything he says and does is justified. The fact that his sons died at the hands of the Lannisters, the fact that Catelyn let Jaime go, the fact that she let him go, what's it called? Yeah, she let him go and, didn't give punishment to him for killing his sons. The fact that Rob, he doesn't, believe that Rob's going to win this war because he doesn't have the men, and the reason why is Rob went and married that woman. Everything that Rickard Karstark says makes sense, and it's almost like he's trying to tell Rob, you're making all the wrong mistakes, and the only reason why I'm still here is because I'm a northerner and I believe in the north, and you are my king. And it shows that the flaw of the northern loyalty, in the sense that Karstark is essentially saying to him is like, I'm going to be by your side till the end of time because you are my king, but you are making every mistake in the world and we're all going to pay the price for it. And I just think that dialogue from Karstark makes so much sense. And you can see that Rob's like, he's listening to what he's saying and he doesn't like it, but he has no response because he knows that in a way he's actually kind of right. And like Rob is starting to think to himself, he's like, fuck, I need to really like get my shit together. But obviously now that he's in love with Talisa, he can't let her go. It's interesting. I think it's really interesting how, that whole section I thought was cool. But of course that was not the standout of that section, because obviously the standout of that period of the episode, and I would imagine it was our favourite scene of the episode, it was definitely mine because it had me nearly in tears.
Yeah.
Was the scene between
same.
Catelyn and Talisa, where she talks about the 2 times she was making that little circular thing. One of them was obviously in season 1, if you remember. She hung it above Bran's bed when he fell. But then, of course, the other one was when Jon Snow came back.
I love how at first it makes it seem like it's one of her biological children.
Mm-hmm.
But then they subvert it with Jon Snow, and then from that, the writing for her was so brilliant.
It was perfect.
It's like
this honestly might be my favourite Catelyn scene. It is perfect.
It's mine. It's definitely mine.
Yeah.
That's one of the best
Yeah.
scenes of pure just character development for a character.
Yeah, because her other best scenes were
I've
were in episode 2 of season 1, like when it was the other scene she had with Jon Snow, like when she told him to get out of Bran's room, and then the scene she had with Ned and all of that, and then the scene with obviously the killer coming in, that was great. But I feel like this really adds so much to her, the fact that she was jealous of his mother and she wished for him to die, and then he got the pox, and then obviously she made that thing to pray for him to come back, and because she felt like such a bad person, the fact that she, oh God, I'm getting sad thinking about it, the fact that she hated this child because she was jealous of his mother, and how she promised to make him a proper Stark to make up for her mistake, but she couldn't do it because she just couldn't bring herself to do it. And now all this that's happened to her husband dying, her father dying, her daughter's been taken from her, her son's gone missing, and her being, imprisoned by her own son. It's all happening because she couldn't love a motherless child.
She has been given perspective, like horribly, but she's been given perspective.
I think this is. I think in terms of all
hatred towards John.
Yeah, and I think in terms of all the religious subtext we've had so far, this is the darkest.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's quite possible that obviously you have to put in perspective. It's all up to interpretation. But the suggestion from her point of view is that the gods have punished her for hating Jon Snow, and she's realizing this. I think that's such brilliant character development for Catelyn. The fact that she's realizing that she wronged Jon Snow.
Yeah. I also think not only was the writing just phenomenal, with the character development being so good for her character, the performance was brilliant. The way she quivered her voice during talking, it's like the expression on her face. It's one of the best acted scenes I've probably ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely in television. It's one of the best acted scenes I've seen. But it's like such a quiet and sad scene. It's not bombastic. It's not trying to be this cathartic, epic moment of just pure raw emotion of energy of amazing acting. It's just such a small scene with so much draining emotion out of this character,
and in terms
the actress did a fantastic job of bringing that out to light.
And in terms of the direction, I loved the way when she said strange brown eyes, it cut to Talisa, because obviously she has she has strange brown eyes, and when she looks at her, she's reminded of Jon Snow.
Yeah, I like that conversation tells us that there's a comparison between her feelings of Jon Snow and this woman that Robb has married.
Mm-hmm.
I love that because I understand that. I understand why she feels like that.
Yeah. Oh, that scene was amazing.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was the best scene of the episode. Yeah. And it's definitely the best scene so far this season, and one of the best scenes in the entire show.
Yeah, it's right up there with the Robert scene with Cersei and the Tywin scene with Arya. It's yeah. I think in terms of Catelyn scenes, this is it's this one. Then you've got the scene from episode 2 with Jon. And then you've got the one from episode 10 where she says, "And then we'll kill them all," the Robb scene. Those three, for me, are the Catelyn scenes I remember the most. She's just such a brilliant actress. Oh, my God. And I love the fact that she's now realizing that if Bran and Rickon are truly dead, if Arya is truly gone, if Sansa's killed in King's Landing, if her father is dead and her husband's dead, and if she loses Robb to this woman or to the war, she's sort of realized that the only family she has left is Jon Snow. I feel like this moment was so perfectly placed in the story because she's now coming to realize that Jon Snow is the only direct family member she really has left, and she treated him horribly. At one point even wished him death and wouldn't honor making him a real Stark because she couldn't love a motherless child. Brilliant. That scene, I remember the first time I watched it, I was blown away by it. I was like, that is so good. That is genuinely heartbreaking to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure. I love like just a little detail I noticed, like the scene before was the scene with Sansa, and I mentioned in that scene that the color grading was so colorful and vibrant. Then you go to the next scene and the color grading is so like drained out in comparison, which I think fits the tone of those two scenes.
Yeah,
like because Sansa's she's in King's Landing, which is like meant to be like seen as it's like the capital. It's so glamorous, filled with beautiful women and like the king, and then you get this scene where it's just grounded in reality. I loved that sort of like, just from the color grading, the storytelling within that between those two scenes I think is brilliant.
Absolutely.
I love how those two scenes were put together next to each other, because I think that was like really smart to do that way, to sort of get like two very emotional charged scenes.
And also, I think the detail of Talisa's eyes is actually show exclusive, obviously, because Jane Westerling in the books did not have brown eyes. She was obviously, well, I mean, she may have, I can't remember, but she was a northerner, so she, obviously, there was no comparison to Jon Snow in that regard. But I think it's very clever of the showrunners to link Talisa to Jon Snow, because it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, God, that whole scene was... I mean, the rest of the episode was really solid, but that scene stole the show. It was phenomenal. And I really loved the way that when after that scene it cut straight to Jon Snow, like his scene came right after, and there was quite a bit of that where a character would mention someone's name, and then that specific character they were talking about would be in the next scene, if you know what I mean. That was really well done. I suppose the only other bit we got, I don't know, there's not really much else to talk about in that regard. I suppose there would be, there's the little section before Roose Bolton comes in with Robin Talisa about how she talks about Northerners being big bearded men. Which again, like you were saying about King's Landing, it's a contrast, because you know King's Landing is obviously very elegant. The north is very rough. I think in that scene, Rob's like mannerisms, he reminded me quite a bit of Ned, in terms of the way he was like standing and like leaning on that fireplace.
I agree.
He's very much starting to sort of act like Richard Madden is very much starting to like channel Sean Bean's performance a bit, I feel, which is I think makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, shall we move on to the next section?
Yes.
Let's move on to the Dreadfort, which is the castle of House Bolton.
Right.
With Theon Greyjoy, who was your favourite character of Season 2. And look at him now.
He's been tortured and bullied into asking why he took Winterfell, and it was gruesome and horrible. He was literally shoved like a sharp object through his finger under his nail.
That honestly might be the most uncomfortable I've been so far.
Yeah, I just sort of shook now just saying it. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, like Garden of Bones is really violent with like the sawing the leg off and all that, and there was a lot of violence in that episode. But man, that torture scene in the Dreadfort was something else. I mean, you kind of have to, though, because it's been built up to that the Boltons, obviously, you know, they represent the flayed man, and they are known for torture, so it makes sense that they would do this. Interestingly, though, there is a small detail in this episode. Very interesting small detail. So, firstly, Robb Stark, when he's talking to... I can't remember who he's talking to, but he has a conversation about how he doesn't know where Theon is. If I'm remembering correctly, someone asked him about Theon Greyjoy and he doesn't remember where he doesn't know where he is. I think it's interesting that Roose Bolton just received ravens. You would assume that one of them may have been from the Dreadfort, but the detail that Rob doesn't know where Theon is, and Theon is in the Bolton castle.
Yeah.
And one of the Boltons, well, the fucking Lord of the Dreadfort, Roose Bolton, is with him at the moment. So you've got to ask yourself a few questions. You've got to ask yourself, firstly, has there been enough time to send a raven? Secondly, is it necessary to send a raven? Thirdly would be, are the people that are keeping him at the Dreadfort, do they want to tell Roose? You would imagine if it was their responsibility, they would, because obviously they want to honour their lord. Is there a sense of urgency too? Or is there, a reason why, there hasn't been a raven? Maybe there's someone that's in the castle that's stopping someone from sending ravens. Maybe they're like shooting the ravens with arrows, because, we're talking about how arrows are being shot this episode. So, obviously we saw in that scene with Theon, there was a character who took his head off when, not his head, the thing that was on his head, whatever you call it, like a sack or something. After the torturers left, he said that, I'll come back for you later. Maybe, and he obviously said that he was sent by the Ironborn to get him out. Maybe he's been, he's not letting the ravens go. It's very possible that, he doesn't want, like, the Ironborn wouldn't want Rob to know where Theon is because they want them for himself. It would make sense why Balin would do that. But there is also a very small chance, if none of that is true, that Roose Bolton actually does know where Theon is, but he's not telling Rob. Does that make sense? Like, based on everything I've said, does that line up with what happened in the episode? All those possibilities?
Yeah. Possibly.
Because, again, like I said, Rob doesn't know where Theon is, but he's in Roose Bolton's castle, and Roose Bolton is with Rob, so why isn't Roose telling him? You got to ask yourself that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Must be
it's interesting.
Why.
It's interesting. And you've sort of got to dig, well, I suppose as the story unfolds, you'll find out where it's not happening. Like, at what point is it not happening? It's interesting, and I think it's one of those very subtle details that you can only notice if you really pay attention.
Yeah.
Like, you've really got to, like, be one of those people that goes into a story and asks all the right questions, which is what you should do if you're especially if you're like a reviewer. Because it's interesting, because when we watch stuff that isn't well written, when you go in and ask more questions, the more questions you ask, the worse it gets. Like, when you think about something like The Force Awakens, for example, when you first watch it in theaters, you got like the rush of nostalgia and all that. But then you rewatch it, on DVD to pick it apart, and you realize that it's full.
How did the Falcon get there?
Yeah, and you realize it's full of flaws, because you start asking questions about the story, and you realize that those questions can't be answered because the story is not well written. Whereas on the flip side, you get something like A Song of Ice and Fire, which has been adapted into Game of Thrones. The more questions you ask, the better it gets. And that's why I love this. The fact that through those very subtle details, you can now figure out there's something wrong here. Because you would have thought by now that Roose would have told Rob that Theon is in the Dreadfort. It's interesting. Shall we move on? Or have you got anything else to say about the Theon bit?
No, other than that, it was just very gruesome stuff.
Yes. Well, speaking of Roose Bolton and his role in the story, we got quite a bit with the storyline between Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth.
We did.
And that was, firstly, it was hilarious, because we got to learn a bit about Brienne, about how Jaime, by looking at her, managed to figure out that she fancied Renly Baratheon. But I really like how Jaime says to her, it was him, him being gay was the worst kept secret. There's a few details to that. Firstly, it wasn't necessarily, because Joffrey had no idea until Marjorie told him. And secondly, Jaime has a secret of his own about his love life. So
yeah,
it's interesting how he says that when everyone in the world is talking about maybe him and his sister. But yeah, I really like their scenes together. I think they have great chemistry, and also, I really like the sword fight at the end. That was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
Firstly, obviously take into account that Jamie has obviously been walking a long way, so he's quite fatigued, and he was imprisoned for a while, so he hasn't been fed well. But, having said that, he is still one of the best sword fighters in the world, and he was beaten by Brienne. And I loved that. I loved that question he said to her of, "If you kill me, you will have failed Lady Catelyn, but if you don't kill me, I'm going to kill you."
Yeah. She's in a very, like, tough dilemma in that moment.
Yeah. That was great. But then, of course, at the very end, we see Locke, who is the man that Roose Bolton sent to find Jamie. And that would have never happened had they not had that sword fight.
Yeah. So
Jamie's decision to pick a fight with Brienne has now had a consequence, where they're being captured by the Boltons.
Yeah, they're captured, and their aim is now to give Jamie back to Robb, as they said. So that's worked out terribly for him.
Oh, yes. Also, one thing I did notice about this episode is that Nikolai Coster-Waldau's Danish accent slipped quite a lot in this. Like, I noticed it more in this episode than any we've had before. And I think it's probably because he's just having fun. Because I know the two actors are really good friends. Like, they got along really well on set. And I think it's because they're sort of just, in the scenes they're improvising a little bit. Like, they're just sort of having a laugh with, playing these characters. And I think that's probably why his Danish accent slips a little bit. Because he's not really, he's not being as, like, strict to the script as he was before. He's just sort of having fun with it. You can tell. But yeah, I did notice that a few of the words he said sounded a bit odd. But yeah, I think Jamie's got a very funny sense of humour. It's interesting because
I agree.
He's essentially poking fun at her. He's essentially bullying her, but it's really funny.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's been doing throughout the entire show.
Yeah.
And every time he does it, it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with Brienne, it's like, because she's so different than any other, like, character within this world. So it's like very unique, sort of like humour that he's using.
I love how her responses are always blunt. She's like, "Shut up, Kingslayer."
Yeah.
And it's almost like she was it comes across like she was kind of like Renly's teacher's pet, if you know what I mean. Like, she's very much trying to, like, be honourable, but she can't because Jamie's just pointing out all the flaws. But in a weird way, they're, like, becoming friends over it as well. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting banter between the two.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this episode did a really good job of proving that Brienne is a very strong sword fighter because she was able to take down Jaime Lannister. And I like the detail of, like, how Jaime says, "I knew Renly better than you did," which actually makes sense because Brienne only knew him briefly. She knew him beforehand. She did know him, but obviously Renly spent a lot of his time either, in wars or, he was in King's Landing. But she does know him from, when they were younger, but the main time that she spent with him was very brief as a member of her Kingsguard, because obviously he was killed shortly after. Whereas Jaime spent so many years around Renly, obviously because of their connections to the royal family.
Yeah.
And I like that whole detail of, like, Jaime basically saying, just because he's your Kingsguard doesn't mean that you know him more than I do. And, like, Jaime actually, I feel like in this episode, he actually started to show a lot of his intelligence, that he's actually not as stupid as his father thinks he is. Just because he's, like, dyslexic and a bit, reckless, doesn't mean he's stupid. He actually does have some intelligence, just maybe not as much as his brother or sister.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I think they do show off that in this episode.
He's very street smart, if you know what I mean.
In that regard.
Like, he's very street smart. Like, he's not good with like books and like words and, you know, facts and figures and history and all that bullshit, but he's really good with like people, and I think that's something he shares with his brother Tyrion.
Yeah, he can read people quite well.
Yeah. Except the difference between them is that Tyrion is smart because he finds a way to avert danger, whereas Jaime does it because he likes the challenge. Like, he tries to get himself into trouble on purpose. Like, he takes a lot of risks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Jaime was great. I think he's becoming for me one of the highlights at this point. Because obviously in season 2 he didn't get that much screen time, but now he's actually getting quite a bit, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, he didn't get that much in season 1 either, outside of a couple of the episodes. Like, he got quite a bit in the first episode.
And then he disappeared for quite a while.
Yeah, like, he hasn't actually got that much screen time in the show so far, but I feel like now they're finally starting to put a bit of a spotlight on him, because he's one of those gem characters that we really enjoy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Every scene he's in, he is one of the best parts about it.
And what I like about that is the fact that on paper he's actually quite a minor character so far, but he feels like a main character because of how well he's been set up. And I think giving him a lot of screen time in the first episode of season 1 did a lot of heavy lifting for that, because from then on he still feels like a main character, even though he doesn't have as much screen time so far, which is, I think it really goes a testament to show how well written he is, how important he is to the plot, and also how well he's acted. Because his scenes always still feel important. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens next episode now that they've been captured by Locke and the other Bolton men.
Yes.
Alright, let's move to King's Landing.
Right.
One of my favourite things about this episode was the focus around Joffrey Baratheon.
I agree. I think the scenes with Joffrey were really good because not only was like the direction, I think in both scenes he was in like really
there were a lot of
really
mirrors.
strong.
There was a lot of mirrors.
Yeah. The cinematography I think was really strong.
Yeah.
But also like we talked about it during the scene between him and Marjorie, how Marjorie is like the best at like turning situations and conversation in her favour by acting like she's quite dumb and dull when actually she's super intelligent.
Because obviously in the same episode we got the scene with her grandmother and Sansa as well, where we obviously we know what she's really up to. But yeah, if it wasn't for the Catelyn scene, I think that may have been my favourite of the episode, because I loved that scene with her and Joffrey. It was brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it was really good. Like, at first, it's like Joffrey is like not antagonizing her, but like sort of like challenging her.
The way he was speaking to her reminded me so much of Robert Baratheon. When he has those scenes where he's asking people about wars and whatnot.
Yeah,
it reminded me so much of Robert Baratheon. But then the difference, like, obviously, we obviously find out that a lot of things about Joffrey in this episode. We find out, I mean, we already knew he was a sexist, right? Like, talks about, like, women do what they're told. We also found out that he's a massive homophobe as well. He said he wanted to make Renly's perversions, like, punishable by death.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that despite all of these comparisons to Robert, he is still a young man, and he was, in his own way, seduced by Marjorie Tyrell because she was different to all the other women. Because she knows what he likes. She knows that he has a fetish for, like, pain, just like his father did. Like, he likes to see people in pain. Because with Robert Baratheon, it was very much like he liked to do it for sport. Like, I want to hit somebody. I like killing. It's fun. I like to drink and kill animals. It makes me feel good. Whereas with Joffrey, you really feel like he has that sadistic side to the point where it's like the only thing he actually loves. It's the only real pleasure he gets. It's like an extreme version of what Robert had. And you can tell that Marjorie is using that to seduce him, and it's working brilliantly for her.
Yeah. Yes, all the stuff with Joffrey was Really good.
I love that scene with the when he was getting dressed as well with Cersei.
Yeah, I think that will remind me a lot of Robert in that scene as well.
Yeah,
like how he like you mentioned him talking about like him being a sexist and like saying that women are intelligent when they're told what to do.
Yeah, and he's
They
like,
do it.
and he's basically saying, I'm not going to be told by any woman how to dress or how to act. You know, I'm not going to be wearing this white robe for the flower girl. You know, basically saying like I'm not going to be changed into a Tyrell. I am a lion and a stag. You know, obviously, it's interesting because like we mentioned how the Lannister red and gold gown looked so much better on him than the white one, and it's interesting how his motivation for wearing those clothes is evil, but we agree that it looks better on him because it suits him. So it's interesting how like the fashion of the scene resembles his attitude, and like when he wore that white cloak, we basically said that that's just not Joffrey Baratheon. That's not something he would wear. It looks so out of place for him. You know, it's interesting because you also mentioned how Jon Snow looks weird wearing a wildling cloak as well. Like he's not wearing the black gear. And again, a bit of linking, like people wearing different clothes to what they're usually used to. Another new character that we got introduced to in this episode was Olenna Tyrell, who is the grandmother of Margaery and Loras and the mother of Mace Tyrell, who we have not met yet. And she is played by Diana Rigg, who was in... she was in the James Bond film, I believe it's called On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's the one with George Lazenby.
Right.
And she was also in The Crimson Horror. And I can't remember the character's name, but she was the one that had that little red leech on her. Yeah. But yeah, what did you think of Olenna Tyrell? What are your first impressions?
First impressions, I thought she was very funny, and I thought she was very direct. I think, which was a nice sort of change of pace.
She's straight to the point.
Yeah, with a character. Yeah.
Yeah, she gives me...
I think it was a good introduction.
She's very much like no bullshit.
Oh yeah,
and she's brutally honest. She's like, you know, my husband was a fat oaf who died stupidly, and my son's doing the same. And you know, she talks about how like she's like, oh, my grandson Loras likes to poke men off horses with his sword, and it also like subtly suggests that like, maybe she knows that he's gay. But what I really like is that the person that she really believes in is Margaery, because Margaery has the same like level of intelligence that she does, except she can see that her granddaughter knows how to fake, you know, she knows how to lie, because obviously, you know, Olenna Tyrell, as we saw with the scene with Sansa, can see through any lies. She knows that Sansa's not telling the truth, and that makes sense as to why Margaery has become such a great liar, is because she's been around her grandmother who can see through any lies.
Yeah.
So to become a great liar, you have to become a liar around a person who can see through lies, and I think that is a really nice detail. But yeah, I love her character. I think she's... I mean, obviously we haven't got that much screen time with her yet, but obviously in her introduction scene, she had Sansa come to her table, and Sansa's still trying to play up the safety act to protect her. But I like the fact that she dug deep and says, you know, you're safe with us, you can trust us. And you know, Sansa says, you know, he's a monster. And I really like the direction of that scene, how it zoomed in on Sophie Turner. I thought that was really, really well executed.
I think the direction in that whole scene was like really good.
Yeah. But yeah, I really, again, like going back to the humorous side, I think Olenna's blunt humor is just so great. Like, she's like, I want the cheese now. Yeah, very sassy.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I like how, it makes sense why they would ask Sansa about Joffrey, and how, because obviously, you know, they're trying to plan to get Margaery to seduce him. And
yes,
because now that they know, they can confirm that he's a monster, Margaery knows what she's got to work with.
Yes.
And like, I like when Sansa says it, she's saying it as if like, she's like, this is like the bane of my life, you know, Joffrey is torturing me. And then Olenna says, oh, that's a pity. He's going to be hard work then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was a really solid introduction for her. Really solid. I think it's going to be interesting when we get scenes with her and Tywin Lannister, because they're both very direct. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, obviously, they're both also at the head of very wealthy houses. But yeah, there's nothing better than like an old British actor, is there? Like, there's just nothing better than that.
Nah.
It just doesn't, like, you think about all the old British actors out there, you know, like Charles Dance, Diana Rigg, you know, fucking Alan Rickman, who was, obviously he's passed away now. Like, just all old British actors, fucking Peter Cushing, Richard E. Grant, like, there's just, or obviously Ian McDiarmid as well, like, he's one of the best. There's just something about old British actors, they're just so great at everything. It's probably because they've spent such a long time being on stage that they know how to connect to an audience. The other small section we got in King's Landing was the scene with Tyrion and Shay.
Yes.
Which at first you said took you back a bit because you thought it was odd, but then obviously it clicked that Shay was obviously playing with him.
Yeah, I think the like sort of way they did it was a bit odd, but then it was like I was a bit worried like it was going to continue that way. It was like no, she's just
I think it's
messing. It's like
I think it's just honestly I think it might just be to do with the language barrier, like with the actress who plays Shay. She just seems a bit in that scene. She seemed a bit bipolar, if you weren't paying attention. But it's not really like that. She's just sort of trying to portray that she was playing with him. She did it in there was a scene in season 1 when she says, "I am Shay, the funny whore," and it's just to show that her, like, I mean, she's not actually angry with him. She's just playing around with him, you know, poking the bear. But it does come across a bit odd, doesn't it? Like, in terms of the performance.
It will. I think just that sort of like. I think in the way that scene was structured was a bit odd, but overall, like looking on it as a whole picture, it's like it's good.
I think it works. I think it works really well on paper.
Yeah.
I think it works really well on paper. In terms of the story, it's just the execution. It's just I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something off. That doesn't quite click. Maybe if she was a little bit more playful, it might have worked. I don't know. It's hard to say because
I think it is the delivery.
Because the whole point is that Tyrion is meant to like be worried, like genuinely worried. So like if she was playful, then he would obviously see through it. I don't know. I don't know what to do about the scene, but there needs to be something that changes. I just can't quite figure out what it is. It's really strange. I mean, I think there's been far worse scenes in this show, but this one, I don't know. There's something about it that doesn't quite click. I thought Peter Dinklage was fine in it.
Oh yeah, I thought he was good.
Yeah, he was quite funny actually. When he says Sansa's quite beautiful, objectively speaking.
I always laugh now because of how criticism in media is now. I always laugh when any character says objectively this is good or this is bad.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I just find it hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, just as a meta thing for me, as someone who criticises media, and everyone's like, objectivity in media is not a thing. It's like, it is, you fucking idiots.
Who was it?
Sorry, a film that you like is bad.
You sounded like the Slovene when you said that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are at war.
God, I'll never forget they ripped his arm off.
Yeah, oh god, that was so weird.
God, that actor is just like he's born to be a tonal shift.
Yeah, very much.
Anyway, briefly, there was a couple of other scenes of Sansa. We got one with her and Shay, and how Shay basically said, if Littlefinger touches you, you must tell me, because she wants to protect her.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like how it's not like master craft or anything, but I like how they slowly have been building up just this little connection that Sansa and Shay have in the last, like, in the second half of season 2, and then so far this season they've done a decent job at building up this small little connection, and like Shay like growing fond in like a caring sense for Sansa, caring that she's safe and going to Tyrion to make sure that she's safe. No, it's just nice. It's like, it's just a little background thing that that I like. It's just nice.
Yeah. And then of course Sansa was reunited with Loras Tyrell, who she fancied at the joust. And now of course you can see that Loras is now having to pretend to be straight, just like Renly was. Because he's obviously, his idea is that he's trying to seduce Sansa for her house, or for his house, sorry. Because obviously, Marjorie is seducing Joffrey. And now, obviously now their plan is to have Loras seduce Sansa, so now they're going to have, this from the Tyrells is obviously tactical, because they're going to get the king's house on their side, but they're also going to try and get the north on their side as well. Like, subtly speaking, I feel like. But it's interesting how Loras Tyrell is having to pretend to do that, and Sansa doesn't know that he's gay, and she obviously fancied him at the joust, so she's loving it. Like, she's really enjoying him because obviously she fancies him. But as you can tell, like, that's not going to turn out well, because obviously, firstly, main reason being Loras is gay, so it's going to have an interesting effect. The one thing that I find really interesting about it, though, is that in the reverse effect of the Renly one, because Renly was the king and Marjorie was the straight one that was trying to seduce him into having children with her, I like the fact that this time round it's a gay person trying to seduce a straight person. Like, it's a reverse of the Renly situation, if you know what I mean. And like, the straight person's being swept off her feet.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it... Yeah. The Tyrells are a fascinating family of characters, I think. They always like poke in the side of the story, like they're never really in the full focus, but what they do in the story is always interesting to me. Like, they were one of my favorite parts of season 2, was that whole storyline with Renly Baratheon and the Tyrells. And it's continuing here, like they're just sort of like slowly just seeping through the cracks in King's Landing and just growing this sort of foundation in it. And like their way of playing the game is very different to everyone else. It's quite devious, but it's interesting because there's other characters that are devious, like Littlefinger, but their deviousness seems a lot more, like, it seems a lot less harmless. It's a lot more sort of, I don't know how to describe it really. It's such an interesting sort of grey area to think about, I think. Because the Tyrells are devious, but they're devious in a very interesting way, because they're not killers. They're not, as far as we know, they're not the kind of people that are going to go out of their way to kill good men to get on the throne, like someone like Stannis Baratheon did with his brother. Like, they're very good people that can recognize, the evil of someone like Joffrey, but they're still tactical and they still want power. It's interesting. It's a really interesting way to go about it. And like, one small detail is that obviously, the Tyrell house is obviously recognized by the sigil of the rose, right? The flower, the rose. Because Olenna Tyrell, they often call her the Queen of Thorns, because obviously with flowers come thorns, and Olenna is the sort of thorn in the flower, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting, I think. Shall we move on from King's Landing?
Sure.
Alright, let's go beyond the wall. We have Jon Snow, who had a very brief scene with Mance Rayder. about Menstruator obviously told them about how he managed to unite all these people who hate each other, and basically told them that the way I did this was telling them they were all going to die if they didn't get south. I think that's a very believable reason for the wildlings to band together. But of course, the main detail that we got in that section was we met the warg known as Orel. Yeah, Orel was a warg, and he said that he saw dead crows. And I think it's cool to have him introduced in an episode where we get to meet Jojen Reed as well. The fact that, you know, in that we saw, like, Osha asked Bran, you know, did he walk into summer like he did in his other dreams? Obviously he said no this time, but in this episode we were introduced to an actual warg in real life who could walk into a bird, and he flew around and saw dead crows. Meaning obviously dead men of the Night's Watch.
Right, yeah.
And obviously, that sort of gives them more believability to, well, the White Walkers must have killed them, because it wasn't us, because obviously the wildlings are all camped there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was a really cool detail. And also I like the fact that when he said dead crows, he turned to Jon Snow, and you could subtly see on his face like he was upset by it, but obviously he didn't want to show it because he's now part of the Free Folk, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was really clever, I thought. And the other detail beyond the wall was with Samuel Tarly, Rast, Gren, Edison, Geo Mormont, and the others, and how Sam obviously is not only in shock from seeing the White Walkers, but he's also fat and slow and can't keep up. And I like they'd like Rast wanted to leave him behind, and then Geo Mormont came in. The commander said, "You are responsible for him because if he dies, then you die." I thought that was really well done.
I agree.
But now you can see that Rast is starting to feel some resentment towards Sam and his commander. Not dying for you, piggy. Yeah, but I thought that was actually quite a logical step after Sam obviously is now in shock of what he saw. Like, he's obviously completely, he's seen something he never thought he would see. And he's like, he just doesn't know how to handle it. He's just scared for his life. And that is how you add stakes to a story, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so do you want to add anything onto what I've said?
No, I pretty much agree.
Yeah, I did also like Edison's honest, dry humour, where he was like, you probably die even if you keep with us. just telling the truth. Yeah, but you want to add anything onto the Beyond the Wall stuff?
No, I enjoyed the brief stuff that we had there.
Alright. Okay, well then we move on to the very last section we're going to talk about, and that is with Arya Stark, who is obviously still with her friends Gendry, Bastard of Robert, and Hot Pie. And obviously I liked how they started it off with, Gendry's asking, like, you could have killed any 3 people in the world, and you didn't choose those ones, like questioning her thing about Jack and Agar, and she says, yeah, but we got out of Harrenhal, you should be grateful.
She also tried to kill Tywin.
Yeah, she tried to kill him herself.
Exactly. And I believe she did ask that Tywin would be killed. So yes, but yeah.
But of course, the main detail of her storyline in this episode was she met the Brothers Without Banners, who we've heard all about since Season 1. If we remember, after the Mountain lost the joust to Loras Tyrell, he went to the Riverlands under the orders of Tywin Lannister to burn them, to basically pillage them and burn them where he could, and fight the Brothers Without Banners, which is why they were torturing people at Harrenhal with the rat bucket, because they were trying to find the Brothers Without Banners. And now we've met them. We've met Thoros of Myr, who was mentioned in dialogue in the scene between Jaime Lannister and Jory Cassell in episode 4 of season 1. You know, when the scene where he talks about, he's standing outside Robert's bedroom when he's with the whores, and he's talking about the time that someone nearly stabbed Jory in the eye on the battlefield, and obviously the next episode Jaime stabs him in the eye and kills him. In that scene, Jaime Lannister says the words, "I remember Thoros of Myr coming onto the battlefield drunk as ever, but with a flaming sword." In the sense that he basically was talking about this man, he came into a war drunk and survived, and it puzzled him as to why. And he obviously had a flaming sword as well. So we do know something about Thoros of Myr because Jaime's mentioned him before, and now we've met him in this episode. So what were your first impressions of Thoros of Myr?
I enjoyed those scenes. I enjoyed...
I really liked the actor. I thought the actor was cool.
Yeah, I like the actor. I thought he was pretty funny, and I think that like... It was such as that. I think that they were pretty funny, and I think they were actually like quite unique compared to other characters.
I like every time Arya tried to say something to make them sound tough, they just laughed. And I like how he was able to like disarm her even drunk.
Yeah, which shows how even with the training that Arya got, she's still like incompetent with a sword. Yeah, in an actual fight, and she still needs to learn.
Yeah, and I like the detail of like they knew that Hot Pie and Gendry were behind that wall, which is interesting because as far as we know, they didn't see them. Yeah, but obviously that the coolest part was when what was his friend's name? I think I may have written it down. I think his name's Angai. He was the one that shot the arrow. I thought that was really cool, where he shot the arrow into the air and he said, "When I stop talking, that arrow's going to hit your head, so I would suggest you move, Hot Pie." You know? That was fantastic. Because I'm done talking. So it kind of shows that the Brothers Without Banners, there's something special about them. The fact that Thoros of Myr can run onto a battlefield drunk and survive. The fact that one of them can shoot an arrow into the air and know exactly when it's going to drop. I think there's definitely something interesting about them, and obviously more will unfold about the Brothers Without Banners. But yeah, I can't really say much more than that, because other than that, it's all just subtext that I've mentioned in other reviews about things that we've had before, and I won't reveal anything again because I want the story to unfold for you. But yeah, and then of course at the very last bit we got they captured the Hound, Sandor Clegane. So again, we know how brilliant of a sword fighter Sandor Clegane is. So if they had the ability to capture the Hound, they must be very powerful, the Brothers Without Banners.
Yeah.
And also it makes sense why they would capture him, because he's the brother of the Mountain. Because we see the Brothers Without Banners are opposed to the Mountain. So they're going to capture his brother. It makes sense why.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool like re-entry for the Hound. Like you never really knew where he was going to come from. And then straight away he recognized Arya.
Yeah, and called it out.
What are you doing with a Stark, bitch? You notice that was the same bar where Catelyn arrested Tyrion?
It did look familiar.
It was the same bar. But I thought that whole section was cool. I really liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
And I liked the little jokes about how, they talked about Gendry's a smith, and they talked about like which shop, and he talks about, Toba Mott's shop in King's Landing. And he said, "Oh yes, he used to sell me swords for ridiculous prices." And then, he says, "Oh, because they're twice as good." And he says, "Oh, so he's not only is he a smith, but he's a salesman as well." Yeah, I really liked Thoros of Myr. I thought his performance was cool. Again, like a lot of new characters we often get in the show sprinkled throughout, he brought something different that we haven't seen before. The same with Olenna Tyrell, the same with Orell, the same with Jojen Reed. They all bring something that we haven't seen before, and I think that's really clever. how all these characters have such unique personalities, and hardly any of them feel similar. The only ones so far that I feel a bit too similar were Walder Frey and Craster. That was the only ones. Everyone else so far feels so unique and different to each other, you know? Top to bottom. Yeah, but do you want to say anything else about that storyline?
No, I think I very much enjoyed it, for sure.
It's cool, isn't it? It's really cool.
It was.
Alright, and that's all for the characters, I believe. So do you want to say anything else about any characters or the plot in general?
No, I think it was just a very well structured episode, pretty good pacing, and some really very brilliant individual scenes, and some great acting.
And some great linking between scenes as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I think what this show does so well is that it does such a good job at rounding up like a sort of like overhead theme with each episode, and it links it all with the writing and the scenes and linking it all together.
Yeah, how like people in the world who are completely different sides of it are having conversations about the same thing, like with, you know, Jaime and Brienne talking about Renly, but then also Marjorie and Joffrey talking about Renly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, do we want to move on to the historical and reception?
Yeah.
All right then. Dark Wings, Dark Words received very positive reviews. Rotten Tomatoes consensus reads, burdened with character and plot reintroductions, Dark Wings, Dark Words starts slow before revving up and delving into the real intrigues of the season. IGN's Matt Fallon said, not many big moments in this week's Game of Thrones, but a lot of new characters came into play. So, the episode was written by Vanessa Taylor, who did Garden of Bones and The Old Gods and the New last season. And again, I find it interesting how Dave and Dan seem to be... a lot of the episodes that feature Rob's wife are written by Vanessa Taylor. And I think that, like I said in the reviews we've had before, I think that may be intentional. Because
probably
I think it's clear that they want a sort of woman's touch on those scenes. Because I feel like the scene with Catelyn and Talisa was very much a feminine scene, and it makes sense why, you know, an episode that's going to feature a lot of female characters would, you know, maybe they want to have a female writer to get that sort of point of view on it. Because, you know, I think it's clear that she understands how to write female characters, but which is why that scene with Catelyn, which I think is her best written scene, obviously, so far in the whole show, works so well because she understands what it's like to be, you know, to be a woman, to be a mother. Probably, I actually don't know if Vanessa Taylor's a mother or not, but if she is, she would understand. And I think it was a stroke of genius from her, just that small bit of character development that doesn't really add anything to the plot of Game of Thrones with Rob's army, but it adds so much to Catelyn as a character.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
It develops her, and it helps for us to understand.
Yeah, I think
like sort of like mental state,
Mhm.
but like
I think
the main reason as to why like the way she feels.
Yeah, I think the only scene that she wrote in the show that would contend with that was the scene with Theon beheaded Roderick. Those two scenes to me are her best scenes that she's written so far.
Yeah,
those were great scenes. But yeah, I thought she did a really solid job. I thought she did a really consistent, solid job. Yeah, I can't fault her. I thought she did fantastic. I also think, to be fair, I also think that maybe why they had the first scenes with Jaime and Brienne with her writing it as well, because I feel like she would understand Brienne of Tarth quite well too, because her episodes from season 2 featured quite a bit of Brienne of Tarth scenes as well, I think, if I remember correctly. Not 100% sure on that. But yeah, I thought she did a fantastic job. That's all I'm going to say. Direction was by Daniel Minahan, which I thought was phenomenal. I thought the direction was one of the highlights of the episode. There was that panning shot of Olenna from behind that you commented on, if I remember correctly. Do you remember when Olenna first appeared, it panned down her back? There was also the zoom in on Sansa. There was the mirror shot of Marjorie and Joffrey that looked like art. It was great. I loved that shot.
There were some really good individual shots.
Obviously, the scene with Catelyn, definitely. The only criticism I have of that one scene with Catelyn is that she was talking to a girl before Talisa got there, and we never saw the girl's face. That was a bit weird. I wish we saw the extra's face, because it felt like she was just talking to no one. We didn't really see who she was talking to. It was a bit weird. It looked like it was almost added in with ADR, to be honest. But yeah, I thought it was great with the shots with Catelyn. It really portrayed her sadness. I also really liked the direction in the torture scenes of Theon. I thought they really emphasized the pain of it, like the fact that they actually showed it. They showed the finger being stabbed, and they showed like the corkscrew going into his foot, but we don't see his foot. We just see the blood come out. That was brutal. That was absolutely brutal. That's one thing I can say about Vanessa Taylor's episodes is not only do they feature a lot of female characters, but they are brutal. Like, because she wrote Garden of Bones as well. And obviously she wrote the All Gods and the New, which had the really choppy beheading of Roderick. But yeah, that was brutal. And then, of course, I thought he did a brilliant job of managing like the magical scenes with Bran, like the dreams. The dream sequence was so well directed. I love how Jon and Robb were blurred out in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought overall the direction was superb. It was brilliant. Oh, there was also that shot of Tyrion when he leaned backwards. I thought that was really well directed as well.
I agree.
Music by Raymond Javadi. Was there anything particular from this episode you want to talk about?
I think the standout scene of the music was probably the Catelyn scene, because it plays the
Stark theme, yeah.
The Stark thing, like Winterfell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would also say the action music from the sword fight as well. I really like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But the tracks we're going to be listening to for this one, the first one is called The North Remembers. That gave me little goosebumps.
That was really cool.
That was from the scene where Catelyn told Talisa about Jon Snow.
Of course it was, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the music I noticed in that scene, yeah.
That was amazing. it was like we talk about how, you know, there was Goodbye Brother, the Stark theme. Then it obviously with Winterfell, with the season 2 soundtrack, it sounded a lot sadder and broken. And then this version, The North Remembers, it's even at an even lower point. Like the Stark family is torn apart at this point. It's an absolute despair. It just seems like with each time that Raymond Javadi writes this piece, it just gets sadder and sadder.
Yeah.
Because like you can hear the violins are like old and breaking, you know, and they're almost going off key. And you can and with that music, you can really, you know, identify Catelyn's grief and her regret, I feel. Brilliant. The next song we're going to be listening to is called Heir to Winterfell. So another version of the Stark theme. That one was played when they got the news about the death of Hoster Tully.
Right.
And again, just a beautiful piece. Didn't think that we get 2 versions of the same song in one episode.
The Stark theme, I think, is like probably my favourite piece of music in the show, and I love all the sort of variations of it.
I feel like
all these different tracks.
I feel like the first one we listened to was very resembling of Catelyn, whereas this one was resembling of Robb.
Yeah.
With Catelyn, it was very much obviously the grief and the regret, but with this one, with Heir to Winterfell, this resembles that all of the father figures around him are dying, and he's now having to take control of his house. But in doing so, he's making a lot of mistakes. One thing we didn't mention in the review that I should have probably brought up was that I love the line where Catelyn says, "Are you going to be taking to my father's funeral as a prisoner?" That was...
It's a heavy line. It's a heavy line.
Yeah. And it's like, is Robb going to maintain his duty to his Northmen that he promised to arrest his mother because she dishonored him, or is he going to have the soft heart to let her go free for her own father's funeral? It's so powerful. This storyline between Robb and Catelyn is one of my favorites. It's so interesting, and there's so much emotion behind it because it's a mother and son at odds with each other, but there's still love between them. And this war is splitting them apart, and it's the last thing she wants because it feels like that Robb is the only thing she has left.
Pretty much at this point.
She's in dire straits at the moment. She's at her lowest point, definitely.
Yeah.
And she's essentially putting it on the table that if I had loved Jon Snow, maybe I would have one person left in the world that I get to care about. It's heavy.
is.
All right, shall we move on to the trivia? I should have asked you.
Yes.
I usually ask you what time is it for.
You normally ask, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. Trivia time.
Trivia time. Dark wings, dark words is an old saying that about messenger ravens, referring to the fact that such urgently delivered messages are often bad news. In the episode, Robb Stark receives news of the death of Hospitality as well as the sack of Winterfell and the disappearances of Bran and Rickon. Well, interesting talking about dark wings, dark words being about ravens, because obviously one of those ravens came from the Dreadfort about Winterfell, and we mentioned the detail of them not mentioning Theon Greyjoy at all, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it makes sense though, because like obviously dark wings, the ravens have dark wings, like they're black. The ravens are black. With those dark wings come dark words. The death of Winterfell, the fact that they know that everyone there has died, like Maester Luwin, for example, and possibly Bran and Rickon. A few scenes with Arya Stark were filmed for the first episode of Season 3, but it was later decided that the episode was getting overcrowded, so all of Arya's scenes were moved to this episode. Both episodes have the same director anyway, Daniel Minahan, though the season premiere was written by Benioff and Weiss, while the second episode was written by Vanessa Taylor. Yeah, I think you can definitely tell that the Arya scenes feel like Benioff and Weiss. You can tell the difference. There's something about the dialogue in them that feels different to the rest of the episode, if you know what I mean. And
yeah.
I get the feeling that scene where the Hound said, "What are you doing with the Stark bitch?" was meant to be the cliffhanger of the first episode of the season. I'm pretty sure it was meant to be, or either that or probably the Barristan scene. But it could have been, and the reason why it's not is because it's been moved, but they had to have the Jaime captured scene as the end. I don't know. One of the two. Actually, no, now that I think about it, it probably would have been the Barristan scene anyway. But yeah, you can definitely tell there's something a bit different about the dialogue in the scenes with Arya. It's a lot more like... how do I say this? It's a lot more cheeky, if you know what I mean. Although, to be fair, the Jaime dialogue is, but I don't know what it is about it. The scenes with Arya are a lot more like... Do you get what I'm saying? I'm trying to get across the words,
I see what you mean.
but I can't quite explain it. Like it's a bit more like rough going in terms of the dialogue. It's a lot more like there's a lot more like swearing and a lot more like I don't know. The attitude is very boyish compared to the rest of the episode, which is a lot more tender.
Yeah.
Like what are you doing with the Stark bitch is very much a Dave and Dan line, I think. Daenerys Targaryen, Stannis Baratheon, and their accompanying storylines do not appear in this episode. Tywin Lannister and the Small Council also do not appear. So yeah, we're going to have to wait to see what happens with them next. Astapor appears in the opening credits but does not appear in this episode. Meanwhile, for storyline reasons, the place in which Theon is imprisoned is not mentioned in any way and doesn't appear in the opening sequence. Yeah, well, I think... I don't know, it's not really a mystery because we know that he's been captured by the Boltons based on what happened at the end of Season 2. But I suppose maybe, I don't know, they wanted to not reveal exactly what castle it was, but it doesn't really matter, to be honest. Like, revealing that it's the Dreadfort is no surprise because that's the castle of House Bolton. Because Dragonstone's in the title sequence as well, and that doesn't appear. This episode marks the introduction of Olenna Tyrell, mother of Lord Mace Tyrell of Highgarden and grandmother of Marjorie and Loras. The palace garden scenes in which Sansa meets Olenna and Marjorie were filmed at the Trsteno Arboretum in Croatia. The village of Trsteno is located just 12 miles northwest of Dubrovnik, which most other King's Landing scenes were filmed. In the book, Sansa's scene with Olenna occurred during a dinner held inside a tower at the Red Keep known as the Maiden Vault. I think it was good to get it outside because it just adds a bit of scenery, you know? It makes it look better.
I agree.
And it makes sense why they would have an introduction scene with Olenna around a garden full of flowers, because obviously, you know, the Tyrells. It is now public knowledge in Robb Stark's army that he married Talisa, Although their marriage had been kept a secret in the season 2 finale, Roose Bolton even addresses Talisa as my queen. Rickard Karstark also acknowledges that she is Rob's wife now. However, at the same time, he criticizes Rob that things have been getting worse for them since he married her. A considerable amount of dialogue in this episode refers to the homosexual relationship between Renly Baratheon and Loras Tyrell. In the books, it was implied largely off-stage, with George R. R. Martin having to independently confirm that he did intend for them to be lovers. The exact extent to which other people knew about Renly's sexuality was also not entirely clear, as even Jaime Lannister makes a stray comment about it at one point. Jaime's explanation in the episode, which was not present in the books, is that Renly's homosexuality was the worst-kept secret at court. Varys, Littlefinger, Cersei and others do have numerous spies in the capital city, so it is unsurprising that word of it may have spread around. Cersei's comment to Joffrey that Renly was a degenerate is also an invented scene, as is the scene between Joffrey and Margaery, in which she tries to explain that he wasn't interested in the company of women. Although Margaery could have directly confirmed Renly's homosexuality simply by saying that she knew he was in a relationship with her own brother Loras, she probably didn't want Joffrey, and more importantly Cersei, to realise this and use it against him. Thus, she had to be deliberately vague and ultimately concoct a story about Renly frightening her with bizarre sexual demands. In reality, Margaery was actually quite tolerant of the relationship and readily accommodated the fact that Renly wasn't sexually interested in her. I thought that was very clever for Margaery, the fact that she managed to dance around getting her brother in trouble, and how she found a way to make it seem like he was gay without, or make Renly feel gay without having to say that he was interested in her brother. If you know what I mean? Because obviously she doesn't want Loras to lose power.
Mm-hmm.
This episode marks the death of Catelyn's father, Hoster Tully, even though he has never appeared alive on screen before. So yeah, unfortunately, it's like a Jon Arryn character where we never got to know him.
Yeah.
Gendry explicitly points out that if Jaqen H'ghar really was a highly skilled assassin, and he would have killed anyone in the world if she named them, that Arya should have picked someone like King Joffrey or Tywin Lannister. In the books, Arya herself realizes that she used up her first two names on relatively minor targets, but by the time she had to use her third name, is more concerned about just escaping Harrenhal. I think that goes to show that Arya was feeling a sense of urgency at the time, when she was in Harrenhal, which is why she couldn't choose bigger names.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to get the Tickler out of revenge, and then she wanted to get Amory Locke because she was in a sense of urgency, she was in trouble, and then the last option she had was escaping Harrenhal, which is what she directly needed, because even if Jaqen had killed Tywin Lannister, she still wouldn't have escaped Harrenhal. So tactically she had to get out.
Yeah.
Lemon cakes are one of Sansa Stark's favourite foods in the books. When they are travelling south to King's Landing on the King's Road, which was in episode 2 for us, the tomboyish Arya wants to run ahead of the caravan and explore the site of the Battle of the Trident, but Sansa declines to go, saying that nothing in the world would be better than sitting with the Queen herself and having lemon cakes. Keep in mind that citrus fruits such as lemons don't grow in the north, and with medieval methods of food, transportation and preservation being what they are, lemon cakes are actually a relatively expensive treat for those living in the north. But that's why the Tyrells can afford them, because they have all of the crops.
Mm-hmm.
During Bran's dream, he relives memories of the archery practice at Winterfell. This includes dialogue recorded for the series pilot, Winter is Coming. The voice of Sean Bean as Eddard Stark is used in the sequence, marking the first time he could be heard in the show since his departure. So yeah, the dialogue that they used in that scene was filmed during the pilots and not the version that we saw. So they used a different line. Well, not a different line, but a different performance of the line, so it was a different take. Obviously done a year before. I thought that was quite clever that they included that. They used that line of dialogue that Sean Bean recorded for the episode that we didn't see. One thing I do wonder though is in getting Jon Snow and Robb behind him, did they frame it up and not green screen, but did they CGI them from the first episode in, or did they have the actors reappear and dress the same way? I can't tell.
I don't know.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Hmm.
It was blurred so much that I couldn't quite tell if it was or not.
Yeah.
According to the in-episode guide, the mounted boar's head that Joffrey shoots his crossbow is the same boar that wounded Robert Baratheon in Season 1. So that is the boar that killed Robert, and Joffrey has shot an arrow through its eye. Catelyn tells Talisa that Jon had brown Stranger's eyes. Jon's eyes are not brown but grey, and not Stranger's eyes. Their colour matches Ned's eyes. Oh dear, we have another Harry Potter situation. Well, let's just pretend they are brown. Is that like a really big plot hole? I mean, it's not as much of a plot hole as it is in Harry Potter, because that's literally the entire drive behind the plot, you know? And like Snape's entire existence. The entire reason he looks after Harry is because he has Lily's eyes, even though he doesn't in the films. Viewership 4.2 overnight and 5.5 overall, so slightly down from last week.
Yeah.
Just slightly. Alright, Callum, give your conclusion and a rating out of 10 for Darkwing's Dark Words.
I thought it was really good. I thought it had a lot of really good individual scenes with some amazing performances. Music in some of those scenes was fantastic. Think this is just a really, really solid episode. And I think it does a really good job at pacing it well, and the structure and the direction were all very good. So I'm probably going to give it a 8.5 out of 10. I think it's just really solid stuff.
I'm very much the same. I thought it was very consistent all the way through. The Shay scene was with Tyrion was a little bit iffy, but I think they managed to pull it off in the end. Everything else was fantastic, and we got introduced to a few new interesting characters like Jojen, Thoros of Myr, Orell, and especially Olenna Tyrell, who I love. They missed out on a couple of the storylines, but they gave breathing room to the others. And obviously, scenes with Marjorie, with Joffrey, that was fantastic. But obviously the standout scene was the one with Catelyn and Talisa. Catelyn's whole storyline in this episode was absolutely phenomenal. And an absolute show stealer. So like you, I'm also going to give it a very solid 8.5 out of 10. Right then. So, next time we'll be watching episode 3, which is called Walk of Punishment.
Ooh.
What are your anticipations for Walk of Punishment?
I'm expecting someone to be punished.
You'd think so?
By walking.
Something like that. What would you like to see more of? Would you like to see any of the? Would you like to see any of the storylines that we didn't get this time?
Oh yeah, of course. I always want to. If we have an episode where some storylines are not present, I'd rather they get shown in the next episode so that it keeps everything relevant and keeps everything progressing in a natural flow.
Yeah, because if we just do a quick roundup, if we remember, Barristan has joined Daenerys. And obviously there's tension because Jorah Mormont is thinking, well, does Barristan know the reason why I'm here? Then you've also got the fact that she's wanting that Unsullied army Astapor. And then, of course, with Stannis Baratheon, he's locked away Davos Seaworth because he failed him. And then also, there was one more storyline. I can't remember what it was. Oh god! I was the small council with Tywin Lannister that also didn't appear. So yeah, looking forward to that. So anything else you want to say before we wrap up this review?
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Right then. Well, we will see you all next time for Walk of Punishment.